Go to monster.com or driving.com and look at some of the job descriptions. They sound like prison sentences. It's like, you will comply with all rules and regulations, and should you not, you will be beheaded by his lord. You know what I mean? It's like, what world do we live in that a peak performer wants to work for you, you douchebag?
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
Kasim, welcome back. You're one of the favorites, man.
Stop it. You say that to all the guests.
No, you're one of my favorites. You know that.
Yeah. Well, you're one of my favorites too. I still remember meeting you, dude. I don't know if you won't remember this because you were a big deal.
In Austin?
I was just a little peon, but the table at War Room, and I went and I sat next to you, and I just clung to you the whole event. Like, I was asking you questions and trying to get the skinny.
And then I introduced you to a bunch of really cool people.
Yeah. I remember that. I felt like I lucked out. I got to sit next to the quarterback at the lunch table.
We had fun, man. That was the first time. It was in Austin, and then we went out to a dinner at True Lux, and dude, we had a great time. I think that was the first time.
I think it was the first time. Yeah, that was a blast. My times have changed.
I know. You've done the same thing. You've given me that same treatment in other rooms. So it's been fun, man. Like, relationships are amazing. Like, listeners, like, build relationships with people that you love hanging out with. And I'll randomly email you and you help me out with so much. I do the same. Like, there's like return on relationships that are genuine and authentic. It's the best thing in the world, isn't it?
It's the best thing in the world for sure. And you never know where it's going to come from. No. You know, like, I didn't realize that we were going to be friends years from now when I was sitting next to you. Just this dude I met that just knew a bunch of stuff. So it was, it's fun to see where that yield comes around.
We were talking before we hit record, and you mentioned that you were in an industry in the past that industry standard margins are 17%. 17% industry standard margins. You had a business that was around that 40% net margin mark, and it wasn't just like hit that one month, but it was consistent. And I think that's something that we want to talk about, is how to increase margins when, like, double your margins.
Dude, you know what's funny is it's not because I'm smart. It was a mistake I made that just paid massive benefits. I built the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world. When I sold, it was the largest Google Ads agency dedicated to Google Ads. And I've never run a Google Ads campaign end to end in my life. So the lesson is, entrepreneurship is not fulfillment. I couldn't run Google Ads if I wanted to. I just found really smart people to run the Google Ads. In the beginning, when I started my agency, I was outsourcing to another agency in Fort Worth, Texas. And because I was outsourcing to a domestic agency, I was being charged domestic rates. And so I had to bill in order to be profitable with those costs. My COGS were domestic. We started to grow massively. I had a big blow up at that agency. It's, I don't want to say it's a long story. It's a short story, but it's fraught with friction, and I won't throw any shade. All that to say, they ended up sending me a go pound sand letter. The agreement we had was 30 days notice. And so I had a ton of clients. I think when they jumped ship, I must have had like 50 or 60 clients, which is, in the agency space, is really big. Most agencies cap out around 25 to 30. So I was twice the size of the average agency. And I was going to lose my only vendor, my only provider, in 30 days. And I scrambled, and I ended up going to India because Google has 3 offices in India. They train up Google Ads specialists. And I was like, the smartest thing for me to do is to not try to reinvent the wheel. Let me go find really, really, really good Google people. Where are the smartest Google people? So I was solution agnostic. I wasn't looking to go international. I was just looking for the best Google people that were accessible to me. They happened to be in India. So I started poaching Google employees. They're being paid on average about $500 USD a month. I'd paid them $1,000 a month. And we're like, dude, and most of them kind of thought, they were like, where's the scam? Where's the catch? What are you doing? Like, why would I leave Google to come work for you? Got enough of them. And in 30 days, which is an impossible lift, built my own in-house Google Ads agency, because we were just a sales organization. We were selling, and then the other companies were filling. And what's interesting about it was I went from paying domestic rates to paying international rates. Because $1,000 for an FTE, I'm still paying them twice what they can make domestically from Google, by the way, which is already setting a high watermark. And yet my margins went through the freaking roof overnight and we exploded. And when I sold my agency, I had 200 clients. And so we explode with this infrastructure where I'm charging domestic rates, but I'm paying for international labor. And it opened my mind. The paradigm is this. Most businesses are willing now to quote unquote outsource, but they only outsource the grunt work. So they'll outsource things like cold calling, appointment setting, data entry, research. They outsource garbage work. But when it comes to knowledge work, they keep it domestic. But that's your most expensive, highest value work. And my question is, like, doesn't it stand to reason that the rest of the world is still producing intelligent people, right? Like, statistically speaking, there's just as many high IQ people in Asia, Eastern Europe, North Africa, Latin America as there are in US, Canada. And this is where I'm going to get in trouble, okay? So just protect me from myself, Eric. The labor pool in the States is suffering from massive brain drain because Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, it's like the Fortune 1000 eat all the most outstanding people, or the most outstanding people go and start their own business because we have this amazing country with this amazing infrastructure where it's easy to be an entrepreneur. So the people that are left, and I'm not trying to slander our collective environment, but I think there's some truth here. The people that are left tend to be left for a reason. Either they're not ultra motivated professionally, they're trying to strike up their own side hustle and they just want something in the meantime. You're a stepping stone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not the belle of the ball as an employer when you're trying to hire in the States, period. But if you go to Latin America, let's say, or the Philippines or India or North Africa, East Asia, you're as aspirational to a person in an emerging nation is working at Google is to a person domestically. Like, to be able to earn in the US dollar when most other countries' currency is in free fall is amazing. To be able to work virtually, it's not the ubiquitous truth that is here. Like, it's an unbelievable benefit. And to be treated, God forgive me for saying, but treated like a human, because so many people in emerging nations have to work with domestic employers that treat them horribly. And so you open yourself up to this labor pool that, dude, I can't begin. There's no level of hyperbole, Eric, that I could offer that would articulate the value lever. It's insane. They're nuclear. They're so potent. You as an employer, everybody's felt this way. You feel like you're just pulling this sled up this muddy hill, and you're the sled dog, and you're the only dog, and you're pulling this thing, and the ropes are digging into your skin, and you're getting cut and abrased. And then when you hire somebody, you're throwing them on top of the sled, and you're pulling them too, while they do whatever little Tinker Tailor Soldier job you gave them. When you finally get employees that strap a rope onto the sled and start pulling with you, it blows your mind. And when they start to outrun you, dude, like, there's just nothing better. There's nothing greater. And so when you look at me, it becomes really obvious that, like, I'm way more successful than I deserve to be. I don't, for our listeners who can't see the video, I don't look like the type of human that somebody would trust with $100 million. And yet I had an agency that had $100 million in ad spend because I had the best employees in the world. Because I would go out and I'd find them. And you can do this systematically. There's a way to do it. Everybody can do it. They're accessible to all humans. And it's an unbelievable win-win because you're taking somebody that does not have opportunity. You're giving them an opportunity. You're paying them more than they make domestically. You're giving them a quality of life they never, ever dream of. And in return, they're so grateful, so hardworking, so potent, and they'll take your businesses places that domestic employees at the moment, in my personal experience, just aren't capable of. How did I do there, man? Am I going to get canceled?
Of course you will. That's okay. Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. I love how you just speak what's on your mind. I thought you did a good job just framing the why there's great talent elsewhere. So I loved everything about that. Why? So I'm one of these guys. So I've been diving into this VA offshore talent thing for a number of years. I'm slow to get on the train. I'm on it though, and you've helped me. I've got VAs doing copy for me, social media, emails, technical stuff. I've got that. I don't have anybody doing super high level stuff though. And I know people are out there that can do that. One of the things that I'm just terrified to give up is my inbox, my email. I'm starting to position myself to give it up. And I'm thinking about giving it up to my executive assistant versus a VA, but I think that's probably my first step in getting some help with that. But I mean, I've made the wrong hires. I've done that in stateside and I've done that with VAs. And anytime a wrong hire is made, I have to look at myself in the mirror. We just had somebody in the franchisee mastermind we were talking to, and she was having a hard time with managers. She's like, I just keep getting the wrong manager. So I think a lot of us have a hard time hiring the right managers or high level managers, much less trying to go to a different country to do this thing that we're not familiar with. So what have you seen with trying to hire the right people for the right job?
If you don't mind, and I'll try to make this quick, I'm going to give you the best hiring framework that's ever existed. It'll work domestically and internationally. I'm writing a book right now called Hire. Your audience can have it. They can have it for free.
Perfect.
It should be done this month. The issue with effective delegation is it assumes that you have somebody effective to delegate to. And the first problem is people hire horrendously. The way we're taught to hire is actually massively flawed. So do you mind me? I'm going to go a bit on a tirade, Eric, and just interrupt me when I start to bore you to death.
Let's do it. Let's go.
So the first thing is your job description is a sales letter. Go to monster.com or Jiving.com and look at some of the job descriptions. They sound like prison sentences. It's like, you will comply with all rules and regulations, and should you not, you will be beheaded by his lord. You know what I mean? It's like, what world do we live in that a peak performer wants to work for you, you douchebag? So make your job description indicative of who you are from a values perspective. Show people the purpose behind your business, how they're going to be purpose-driven and purpose-led. And this is the part where I'm going to lose everybody, but stick with me. Pay more. Pay more. There's nothing more expensive than a cheap employee. I'll say it again. There's nothing more expensive than a cheap employee. Winners want to win. Pareto talent wants to win. The way we win is the way we keep scores money. When you pay 10% more than the high water mark, which is a lot, by the way, 10% more than the high water mark, you actually, just from a pure math perspective, pure business sense, you don't get 2 or 3 times more output. You get 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 times more output. So we're taught as business owners, every business book that you've ever read treats people like commodities. It's vile, dude. It's pernicious. It's evil. A commodity is easily interchangeable, right? So if I have a corn on the cob in my hand and you come and you trade my corn on the cob with another corn on the cob, I'm no better or worse than I was a moment ago. That's not true with people. One person is not. People are a miracle, Eric. People are a literal. I don't care if you're an atheist. You'd have to believe that the human being is a miracle. We're ultra brilliant, self-propagating super apes that run around solving problems and inventing shit. That's amazing. And we have the ability to benefit from these true miracle humans, but we start the wrong way. We start by trying to get the cheapest ones. Why would you do that? Go pay more, show the winner they can win. Pay more. People need 3 things at an absolute minimum. They need adequate compensation. They need enough money to be able to spend, save, have fun, and not worry. Adequate compensation, 10% more than the high watermark, you're going to get the best people in the world. Adequate compensation. 2, freedom. They need some flexibility. If you're screenshotting desktops or, making people fill out red slips because they're 60 seconds late, like, who wants to work in that environment? What kind of Nazi Germany horseshit are you building in this company of yours? 3, they need purpose. And by the way, that doesn't mean you need to have, you don't have to save dolphins. At Solutions 8, we had a department that did nothing but listen to phone calls. We were doing lead generation. So when we would generate a phone call lead, somebody had to listen to it and score it. Horrible job, horrible boiler room job. I'd never do it. But I would on a regular basis tell that team, there were 3 people on the team, and tell them how important that job is. You guys, we're optimizing against Google's algorithm, and if we give it a false positive, it's catastrophically damaging. And I would talk about them on sales calls, and I talk about them publicly, and they knew my job is important. I have purpose, as opposed to, oh, we lost another call rater. I had people in that department for 3 years, dude. So compensation, 1, freedom, 2, purpose, 3. And that goes in your job description. Let people know, hey, I'm willing to point. Now, here's the thing about paying more, is I tell people, I'm not paying you more than this job is worth, because I have unreasonably high expectations. But if you're willing to meet me there, you're gonna deserve everything that I'm paying. Now, in the job description, at the very top of it, you're gonna say, when you apply, your application needs to read in the subject line, I actually read the instructions. That's a signal for them to actually read the instructions. And then you're going to include instructions. And those instructions can be whatever you want them to be, by the way. I call them fly traps. I do things like include your resume as a link in a PDF format with this naming convention. Now, I don't care. PDF, Word, whatever. I want to know that you can stop, follow instructions, pay attention, be diligent, right? I'll ask them questions like, what does this quote mean to you? Or if you're an animal, what type of animal would you be? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody that follows the instructions moves to the next step. Anybody who doesn't gets immediately filtered out.
The point of that is just to follow instructions. That's the point. The point isn't like anything but can they follow instructions. That's like the
anything but can they follow instructions. And maybe are they bringing more to the table than they're asked? Because if I say, like, if you're an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? If they just go dog, I'm like, all right, dude, well, thank you for doing the absolute complete bare minimum, right? Like, I now have a sense as to who you are as an employee. When they submit, that filtering process, by the way, when you pay more, it's a funnel. Like any sales funnel, it's a funnel. And when you're willing to pay more and you offer flexibility and you offer contribution, purpose, your funnel gets filled massively. So you have to have these flight traps. You filter out people according to formatting the answers to the questions, etc. I do not ever filter people out according to experience or education. Why would you? Why would you do that? Unless you are hiring for a job that requires certification, hire for will, train for skill. So you end up with the people that have followed instructions. Now, the next thing I do, don't interview. Your job is to not interview, Eric, because why? Interviews tell you nothing. Everybody's made interview an art. When you interview people, they are Gandhi and Jesus and the Mother Teresa combined, and they're capable of everything, and they work too hard, and they stay up too late, and blah, 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 blah. So what I do is I send people an email, and I say, hey, listen, really appreciate you following all the instructions. This is all, my EA does all this, by the way. The process is mapped out. I really appreciate you following all the instructions. I've learned that interviewing tells me nothing. So I want to pay you for a trial project. I'm going to pay you for 2 hours of your time, and then I give them an adequate amount of money for 2 hours of the time. In international markets, it's $20. $20 for 2 hours, if you're in the Philippines, is amazing. You're not going to get rich, but it lets you know I respect your time, and it lets me hold the trial project to a certain standard. If you're doing it domestically, pay them whatever a reasonable domestic rate would be. And then I say, if you agree, send me your PayPal address. Here's the trick. They send me their PayPal address, I send them the money in advance, and then I don't follow up. And I wait to see who follows up with me. Because if they're willing to ghost me for 20 or 50 or $100, that's not the type of person I want to employ. And Eric, it has been an absolute, complete, and total lifesaver. And I'll get an email sometimes a month later from somebody being like, hey, you sent me money and never sent me a project. I'm like, yeah, I definitely don't want to hire you, mister. I need to be watched every step of the way. As soon as they follow up, I send them the trial project. The trial project has to be indicative of the work that I'm going to have them do. So if I'm hiring for a graphic designer, it's a design project. If I'm hiring for a manager, it's a management project. If I'm hiring for a developer, it's a development project. But there's a ton of fly traps embedded in the project. For instance, for the first thing I want to know is that they can actually manage themselves and manage timelines. So I'll say, here's the scope of work. How long is this going to take you? I don't say, I need this by Friday. I say, how long is this going to take you? Because I want to know they can manage expectations. They'll come back and say, it's Monday today. I'll get it to you by Friday. Great. I'm glad you can communicate on those terms and that I don't have to manage you. You're the type of person that can pull the sled. Here's what I do though, Eric. I send them whatever it is, like a drive folder. I'll say, hey, here are all the assets you're going to need. Here's a username and password. I send them the wrong password. And I wait to see when they'll follow up. Because if I get a frantic email Thursday night saying the password doesn't work, now I know exactly who you are. And especially in virtual environments, even if it's not virtual, but especially in virtual environments, I don't want procrastinators. By the time you're done with this project, you've spent a couple $100 to $1,000 paying for trial projects, which is okay when you think about how expensive bad employees are. And everybody who submitted a trial project, if you like their project, they're now hireable. When you hop on the interview, now it's just, who do I like? Who resonates with me? This person is a badass. And dude, if you want to go further, if you're hiring for somebody in customer service, I like to do things like let's schedule an interview, send me a video conferencing tool that you think we should use, and send me instructions on how to use it as though I'm a person whose technical acumen you're unsure of. Because I want to know, A, you can make a decision. Because if you're like, wait a minute, do I use Zoom? Do I use Google Meet? Like, you're going to suck the life out of me and be a horrible employee. I don't care what you use. Just make a decision. And I want to know that you can communicate with my clients without being condescending or stupid. I'll do other things too. Like if I'm hiring for a sales position, I'll have them schedule time with me and I'll cancel at the last minute. And I'll see if they follow up. Because, dude, if you're a salesperson who can't follow up, what am I going to do with you? I've actually had somebody go off on me for canceling too. And I'm like, I'm not going to put you in front of my clients. If this offends you, my clients cancel 30% of the time. We're not their priority. Their clients are their priority. So you do this process. And when you get to the end, you have this great big funnel. And dude, I only hire the top 1%. But when I get to the end, I have the top 1%er. And then I have someone, to get this, doesn't need to be managed. Now, here's the key. This is critically important. When you find these people, you can break them, you can ruin them, and you can ruin them by micromanaging. There are so many times that we intervene where we, as employers, just should not be intervening. If you don't like the color of the logo they chose, or the font here is different than you would have picked, or shut up. Who cares? I actually learned a quote yesterday. I was on a podcast, Rafael Cortez, and he says, authorship creates ownership. Let your employees maintain ownership. Delegate projects, not tasks. If they need help and come to you, absolutely help them. But I call it the black box of delegation. Hey, Eric, super excited to work with you. Here are all the resources available to you. Here are the other employees that you can draw down from. Here's everything that we have in our repository of resources. Here's the money that you can spend. Here's the software that we have. Here's the end result that I want. I want a website that allows people to fill out a form and tell me that they want to sell their self-storage facility, let's say. And that's it, black box. I don't care what happens in the interval, or I don't care what CMS you use. I don't care, unless I do, in which case that needs to come in the resources part, right? Here's the input, here's the output. The black box lets you take full and complete autonomy. And when you treat people like that, surprise, surprise, they're autonomous. And it's unbelievable what the human being is capable of when they're not being micromanaged. My favorite role to do this with is your EA. Your EA should never be your EA for very long. The EA is such a great role. It's an incubator. You get to find amazing people because you get to assign them all this random shit and see what they're good at. My first EA became a director of automations. My second EA became a director of social. My third EA became my CTO, managed the entire due diligence process on my exit, and is now one of my best friends. Like, your EA is the most ascendable position possible. So hire an EA. And here's the other thing that people do wrong. You give somebody 10 things to do, okay? They suck life at 2 of them. They're okay at 6, and they're great at 2. And the entire management world focuses on the 2 things they suck at. They're like, all right, we're going to build a performance improvement program, kid, and we'll get you there. Don't worry. Pat on the back. It's like, why would you do that? It's the fun. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it spends its whole life thinking it's stupid. Just stop assigning them those 2 things. I had this guy, he worked for me. His name was John Moran. He became my business partner. Greatest Google Ads mind in the world. When I sold my agency, one guy, this is the Pareto distribution. One guy managed 40% of my revenue. 40% of my revenue. Here's what's really interesting about John Moran. He cannot for the life of him follow processes. So all of our standard operating procedures inside of ClickUp, if you change a bid or a budget, you need to say you've changed the bid or the budget, and you need to check these tasks off. All the things that a Google Ads specialist needs to be able to do, John couldn't or wouldn't do. In any other company, John would have been fired. In my company, I just hired somebody to follow him around because I realized he's an absolute freaking genius. And an EA can sit there checking off his little boxes while the super genius makes Google Ad campaigns run. And I got the benefit of the best Google Ads mind in the whole wide world. So stop treating people like they're commodities, like they're all the same, like, they're just automatons. Find out what their miracles at, and then unleash them as miracles in your business. And dude, it's crazy how little you have to do when you have these people that are actually willing to run. So I'm sorry, I went off on a tirade there. It got really preachy, dude. How did I do? I'm sorry.
You did great. I love it. Like, I'm not taking notes, but I'll go back and I'll use some AI to take some of these notes and pull some stuff out. So how many projects do you, you're hiring for one job, how many projects do you typically give out or assign? So you're doing the whole thing. Now you're paying $20 or $50 for a project. Like, give me a sense of how many you do.
It depends on how many people I want to hire. If I have one open position, I don't like more than 10. I don't like to assign more than 10. If I'm trying to hire multiple people, like when we were scaling Solutions 8, I needed Google Ads specialists. Like, I was desperate. And so I would do 20 or 30 if there were those people. I try not to compromise on certain things. You know, if there's submission, and you'll see this come through sometimes, a really good applicant forgets one little thing, I'll still let them kind of sneak through, but I'll let them know, hey, this is unacceptable, and I'm only sneaking you through because of these other reasons. You now have to up your game. But I don't like to do more than 10 trial projects. And dude, when you do 10 trial projects, you should get back 3 to 5 people at this point that are amazing. And because you're paying for the work, the expectation of delivery is much higher than a free trial project just to see how they do. So, and I'd make sure the trial project's hard. Make it hard. Make it a tough one. Make it something that, you know, it's not a junior level employee that would be able to accomplish this. It's whatever the person's going to want to be able to hit the ground running doing.
So you have a company that helps people with this. I don't think you're taking on any new clients right now, but what's the name of your company and what do you do?
ParetoTalent.com. I named the company after what we're doing. We're producing the Pareto distribution. It's the most important mathematical construct in business, maybe in life. The Pareto distribution says that 20% of your inputs yield 80% of your outputs. And dude, it's true in every organic ecosystem. It's insane. It'll blow your mind when you really start to see the impact. 20% of the cows yield 80% of the milk. 20% of the criminals commit 80% of the crimes, which is crazy. But 20% of your workforce does 80% of the work. And that number is fractal. And so if you think about it like an organization with 1,000 employees, which is a pretty big shop, right, for a small business, 1,000 employees. In an organization with 1,000 employees, 200 employees are doing 80% of the work. And you think like, well, gosh, that, you know, that's over-indexed, but I believe it. That's reasonable. But zoom in on those 200 employees. 40 of those employees are doing 80% of that work. Zoom in on those 40. 8 of those employees are doing 80% of that work. Zoom in on those 8. 1.6 of those employees are doing 80% of that work, which means that in a 1,000-person shop, one person is doing 40% of the work. And what's unbelievable to me is most businesses try to mitigate this risk. They call it key man insurance. And so if you go to Quicken Loans or some horseshit organization where they want averages, everybody should be doing the average. So if they see somebody over-indexing or overperforming, they're like, oh, spread that across other resources because they don't like seeing existential crises on a spreadsheet. And what they do is the Pareto distribution is a hierarchical structure, so it's built like a pyramid. So think about a pyramid in your mind. The better the people are, the higher up the pyramid they go. But the output is built like an inverse pyramid that sits on top of that pyramid. So the higher up you go, the more output you get. And yet most organizations are trying to flatten their pyramid, dude. They're trying to not have Pareto talent. It blows my mind. So what we do is we try to only find the Pareto people. You still end up with a Pareto distribution, but you over-index towards high performers, which means you end up being a massively potent shop. It's why some of these organizations, you know, there's 50-person organizations that convert kits like this. I think ConvertKit they have less than 100 employees, billion-dollar company. You can do that when you hire properly, hire well, treat people well. And so the company's Pareto Talent, we only staff for EAs. We will not staff for grunt work. So if you call up and you're like, oh, I need cold callers, I need data entry, we don't do any of that horseshit. It's if you have, that doesn't mean they won't take out the trash. My EA helped me figure out how to ship my dog yesterday. We're shipping her from Scottsdale, Wisconsin. She helped me do that. So there's like random ad hoc work that you can have them do, but you have to treat them like real member of your team, real people. And I'm having a hard time producing enough EAs. So, but dude, people don't, if you want the easy button, come hire me. We're more expensive than you'd be if you went and hired them yourself though. The process I gave you, swear to God, that's the exact process we use to find our EAs. We put them through a boot camp where we train them on some of the A priority things that an EA should know, but you're going to be able to do that in your organization anyway. My goal in life, I'm already rich. My goal in life is to help people in emerging nations with experience new opportunities. So if all this does, if you don't hire me, but you go hire people in emerging nations, God bless, dude, I feel like I've done my job. Because there's so many people that are unbelievably potent and unbelievably deserving. And bro, the impact you can have on their life is amazing. There was a young man that worked for me. He was one of the Indian Google Ads specialists I mentioned to you. In India, the Google Ads specialist at the time started at $500 a month. He did so well and kept being promoted. He ended up making $4,500 a month. 9 times, bro. Imagine making 9 times what your peers make. He bought his family the first house the family ever owned. He got himself married, which in India is a really, really big deal. It's super expensive. He bought a motorcycle, but the kid managed my biggest client, managed $2 million a month in ad spend. Totally worth it. That client paid me almost 50 grand a month. So I'm paying $4,500 a month to get 50 grand a month. Great arbitrage, right? And I get to change somebody's life. And dude, I've got almost 100 stories just like that. People that got to stay at home and hang out with their kids and not worry about money anymore, especially in countries where there's no social safety net. We don't know what that means here. So, and I'm not trying to be Pollyanna, dude. I'm not trying to play woke savior. And it's not Robin Hood. You're benefiting too. And How fun is it to make a contribution like that, and see somebody really deserving, as opposed to some of these kids that I tried to hire when I'm hiring domestically. First words out of their mouth, what's my title? How much PTO do you offer? And it's like, shut up. Are you imbecile? Are you kidding me? Like, this is the way that we're going to start a relationship? So anyway, again, I've offended, but I'll try not to get canceled.
You've offended half of the audience. So let's say someone they're ready to pull the trigger. They want to hire that EA. You are too expensive for them, or you don't have enough EAs because you're just not ready for them yet. Do they go to Upwork? Do they go to PH online jobs? Like, how do they find them? What's their first step?
That's a great question. So you want to stay away from the directories, Upwork, Freelancer, etc. And the reason you want to stay away from those is because that's where the entrepreneurs are. So when you go to Upwork, you're not hiring an employee, you're hiring an entrepreneur. This is a really smart, industrious person who's figured out how to run their own business and is probably making way more than you want to pay. The key, and this is my super secret trick, dude. I shouldn't even be giving this to Eric. This is real secret sauce. This is just because we're friends. The key is finding local job directories, local to their locality, local job directories, and to poaching brick and mortar employees. So you want the bank manager that's sick of being a bank in the Philippines, sick of being a banker. I have a personal CFO. He's a college professor in Argentina, and he just can't make the money he needs to make in order to support his family. Just had a newborn baby, but loves being a college professor. It's a perfect symbiotic relationship because he works for me full time, and then he teaches classes when he's not working. And he can work for me whenever he wants. So he teaches classes during the day, and for me, he's working, in the evenings, or I don't know. Dude, I don't even know when he gets his work done, but he does an immense amount of work, and I'm super happy with him. So find local directories, and one of the hard parts is figuring out how to key in on the locality you're going to hire with. This is going to get real racist real quick. I really like the Philippines for creative work, graphic design, video editing, etc. I really like South Asia for engineering work. India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. I really like North Africa for sales roles. I really like Eastern Europe for developers and project management. I really like Latin America. Latin America is a big, big place. I like Latin America for a lot of things. And the cool thing about Latin America is time zone's not an issue. English proficiency is much higher. And then watch me. I'm going to be delicate with what I'm about to say. My father's Pakistani. Okay, so I use him as an example since it's a personal example. If I put my Pakistani father with my father's Pakistani accent on the phone with my more conservative clients, the Asian accent, generally speaking, has a negative neuroassociation because we've been inundated with bad call center experiences. It's not racism. I'm not saying it is. It's a type of novelty response that indexes towards the negative. The Latin accent could be your neighbor. The American ear is just more acclimated and more accessible to the Latin accent. So even for people who don't realize they have those preconceived neuroassociative, prejudices, though, if you want somebody on the phone, I really love the Latin accent. They watch our movies and listen to our music, and so the cultural idiosyncrasies are a lot lower. And there's a couple of countries. Argentina is my favorite right now, bro, because the Argentinian infrastructure, great power, great internet, great college graduate rate, one of the highest college graduate rates in the world per capita, produces more economists than anywhere else in the world, but their economy's in free fall, which is a sad irony. And so the average Argentinian is making $200 to $300 USD per month, the average white-collar Argentinian. So if you walk in and pay them $1,000 a month, like, holy shit. And there's a Catholic mandate that all Latin Americans are on LinkedIn. At least that's how it seems to me. Like, LinkedIn is a great, great, great place to go if you want Latin Americans. So you're going to have to kiss some frogs, especially with, and that's the other thing too, is you need to get used to cultural barriers, but don't let them stop you. I'll give you an example. Again, to go bash my own heritage, Pakistanis cannot be on time for anything. We call it brown people time. If a Pakistani tells you, oh yeah, I will have that to you Friday at noon, he means Monday at 4. And you can do one of two things. You can bash your head against the wall trying to force these people to be on time, or you can build padding into your system with the understanding that Indians and Pakistanis, for whatever reason, can't be on time. Indians and Pakistanis, and this is a cultural thing. They have a hard time saying the words "I don't know." So if you ask a Pakistani, like, hey, I need this WordPress plugin fixed, do you know how to do that? They're going to say yes. And what you need to do is dig in and be like, oh, okay, can you talk me through what that process looks like? Have you done that before? And you start to dig and you realize, no, the answer is no. And they're afraid to tell you that because culturally in their environments, they've been punished for not knowing things that they had there's no reasonable expectation that they know that thing. But you just have to understand that. And when you learn to work with the culture, Filipinos have a really hard time with constructive criticism. Filipinos look at Americans like Americans look at Eastern Europeans. You ever talk to an Eastern European who walks up and says, your baby's ugly and you are fat? And you're like, bro, why are you being so mean to me? Like the Eastern European temperament is very blunt, right? The Filipinos look at Americans the same way. And so when you're offering constructive criticism to a Filipino, you need to sandwich it between two really good things. Otherwise, you're going to crush their life and their soul. The Latin Americans take certain holidays very seriously. So and the way to know those things, by the way, in some of those instances is just ask. Like just get a sense as to who somebody is. And if you're willing to contend with some of those just small things, bro, you end up with like badasses, killers, assassins, bloodthirsty, go out, do anything, like really amazing employees.
Let's shift gears and talk about delegating projects that are more than just the normal task when people think about hiring a VA for low-level task data entry. So a lot of people think about, offshore talent, data entry. What are some of the projects that people should be thinking about? They might not be there right now because they probably need to start out with data entry or some lower level task. But what are some of the things that would be challenging for people to think about hiring offshore?
You'd be surprised at the whole, they might not be there. We just hired a young lady for Pareto Talent. Her name's Ampy. Well, we didn't just hire her. We hired her earlier this year. Ampy's never had a job before. She was a college student, recently graduated. And dude, I will throw shit at Ampy that has no direction. I messaged her the other day and I was like, hey, I want to start doing more podcasts. So I want you to come up with a podcast SOP for identifying appropriate podcasts for me, booking me on those podcasts, following up, repurposing the content, figuring out how to maximize the value. Go. So it was a 90-second voice message of like, so as an entrepreneur, look at, everybody has a list sitting on their desk of all the stuff that they can't get to. Look at that stuff. I want to write a book, let's say. So Erik Van Horn wants to write a book. He's the world authority in franchises, smartest guy in the whole wide world when it comes to franchises. And the franchise game has changed. Let's say new legislation is launched, right? Franchise game has changed. Erik wants to write a book. Can't find the time to get started. You don't want your EA to write your book, but you could say, hey, Ampy, I want to write a new book. The legislation in the franchise space has changed. Do me a favor. First, go back and read my last book. Summarize the points that you think are still applicable based off of this new legislation. And then have some conversations with ChatGPT about where I need to update it. And do as much research as you can on other articles, other podcasts, and other books out there that talk about this new legislation and how they frame it. And then summarize those in notes that allow me to take and now all of a sudden, what do you have? You have an outline for your new book, right? Like anything, dude, I need a new website. I want to launch this software application. I want to find this other resource. I want to do research on all the competitors. I want to enter this new market in this new category. Like, hey, I want to do this thing. The key to delegation is, it's like, you ever played soccer?
Long time ago when I was a kid.
Okay. My 7-year-old's obsessed with soccer. So all my analogies now are soccer, or as our international friends call it, football. The thing that's really interesting about soccer is, unlike many sports, you're actually not trying to score until the last 1% of the play, right? Like basketball, as soon as you're across the half court line, especially if you're Steph Curry, you can put that ball in that hoop. You know what I mean? With soccer, you're kicking the ball down the field, and you're not even kicking it at the net. You're just kicking the ball down the field with the hope and expectation that somebody else on your team can get the ball and then kick it further down the field. And then somebody on their team can get the ball and kick it further down the field. And you don't care how close it gets to the goal as long as it's getting down the field. And then at the last 1%, now it's like, all right, guys, how do we get this ball into this net? That's the way projects should be managed. Just kick the freaking ball down the field. Stop trying to finish the whole thing right then and there. It's like, hey, I just want to be on more podcasts. Dude, you could start there. Hey, I just want to be on more podcasts. Go do research on how to get me on more podcasts. You don't even need to provide context. And the thing that I like to do with new EAs, I like to overwhelm them with work. I never want anybody working like more than 40, 50 hours a week because I think that that's soul-sucking, and all the data shows that it's not productive. So I say, hey, I only expect you, let's say just to use round numbers, I only expect you to do 10 units of work a day. If I assign you an 11th unit, it's okay to come back to me and say, hey, I have too many things. Which one of these do you want me to push? And then I give them more work than could ever reasonably be accomplished. And I make sure they always have things on the back burner they could be working on, because nobody's going to run faster in their employment than when they start, right? The fastest the treadmill of employment ever goes is the first 90 days. So I try to overwhelm them with stuff. But the other thing that it lets me do is it lets me see what they're good at. Are they good at research? Are they good at, programming? Are they good at creating new things, design, ideation, naming conventions, content creation? So I give them a bunch of random stuff, all projects. And then I get to see like, oh, what is it that this person's really going to crush? And then I try to index in that direction. So was that a good answer for the project discussion?
Almost. Like, give me some actual projects that most people it's probably not even on their radar, like expensive work.
I joined Justin Donald's investment mastermind. I know you know JD. And I just made my exit. Somebody gave me a great big bag of money. Worst thing you can do to poor people is give us money, by the way, because we instantly think we're investors. And I'd been snapped on the nose a couple of times and told by reality, you are not an investor. So I went and I got myself some education, and I'm in Justin's mastermind, and I realized everybody's buying mobile home parks and self-storage units. I pick up my phone and I send a voice message to my then EA and say, I want to buy self-storage units. Build me a website, the ads, the CRM, and the pipeline, so that people who want to sell their self-storage units will find my website and convert. Like that project. Hey, find me a new project management tool based off of the criteria. We're having a bottleneck with our project management. I need a new project management tool. Hey, we're having our traffic is atrophying on Google Ads. The costs are way too high. Go come up with 4 or 5 or 6 new traffic acquisition strategies so that I'm not completely beholden to Google Ads. I need a new strategic and referral partner. All of our clients are coming in through referral partners. Here's 30% of my clients at one point were all coming from Chris Brewer at OMG Commerce, who I know you know. So go find me. Here's OMG Commerce. Here's why they refer work to me. Go find me 10 more OMG Commerces. Like things that you think only you are capable of, you're not the only person capable of that. Give them a macro-ass project and then watch them sink their teeth in. And keep your expectations reasonable. They're not going to knock it out of the park the very first time on the very first project. That's why you give them a handful and you start to see what it is that they're really good at.
All right. I think if you've kind of liking what Kasim's talking about, which I know most of you are loving it, follow him on social. Are you still doing those social posts? You were doing some great social posts for a while. You still doing?
I published it as a book, dude. You can buy all my posts. It's called The Book of Threads. That should be going live here pretty soon.
They're great.
I don't write them anymore. I stopped.
So get the book on all his posts. Follow him on social. This guy is a giver. So you probably even DM him. You'll probably get his EA. But I'm guessing it's not you, is it? My EA manages my inbox. But you can email me at kasim@3xfreedom.com and my EA will get it. Point of that is he's a giver. And if you need something, you need some help, like he will point you in the right direction. I encourage you to, check out his company. Just follow this guy and learn. Go listen to other podcasts that he's been on, because you'll just learn a ton from him. People that know him know how wicked smart he is, and about all kinds of things. So, Kasim, anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
I love Erik Van Horn, and if you're listening to this, you're in the right place. This dude is a badass, and he's done it a couple of times. So I appreciate being on, brother. Thank you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.